Let's do it. All right. So I'm here with Brian Neville O'Neill, head of content at LogRocket. Brian, how are you?
I'm well. How are you, Jimmy?
Pretty good. We're here today to chat about a new role that you're hiring for, a content marketing manager role. We're going to dive into all the specifics of that. But maybe first, Brian, could you just kind of give us the 30,000 foot view of LogRocket?
I can, and I will. I'll try to do it using the least amount of jargon possible. Although I'm not sure that that's totally unavoidable. But okay, so the way that you can think about LogRocket is it's aimed or it's aimed at both developers and product folks and UX folks. Those are kind of the three personas that I think about. There are others, but those are the three big ones. And it's a front end monitoring tool and product analytics solution where the goal is to kind of make it so that software teams can create better experiences for their customers. So kind of in even plainer English, we use things like session replay or performance monitoring. And again, the types of analytics where you can see how users are interacting with the site, or I'm sorry, the web app or the mobile app. Just kind of get an idea of what's going wrong, where things could be improved. That's the product kind of in a nutshell, and is as simple terms as I can explain it without being in sales.
Yeah, no, that's great. I think it's worth highlighting that content has been a pretty important part of LogRockets journey. One of the things that really stood out to me in the job description, which obviously we'll link to and folks should go read, is that you get 3 million monthly page views, which is pretty insane. And I know this is sort of a diversion from talking about the role itself, but I'd be curious if you could offer any insight on kind of the story behind that and how you got there.
Sure. So yeah, I mean, I always say it for sure didn't happen overnight, right? I started at LogRocket in September of 2017. The company was founded, depending on kind of how you think about it, in 2016, right? I was the first non-engineer hire, which is one of the reasons why I took the job. Is that content has been really important and really a focal point for LogRocket since the very beginning. And when I joined, there was a blog that existed, and we had kind of one of the co-founders had recruited some writers, some freelance writers that were kind of working for other blogs, and we were just kind of mimicking without much of a plan, basically.
Mhm.
And the genre here is very education focused, right? Like just like everyone else, developers are Googling things as a core part of their job. That's not weird. But they do it a lot. You know, you come up with a project and you forgot how to do something, or you never knew how to do something and you just Google it. So like the way that we started was figuring out, like that first year was recruiting authors, doing the SEO research to show you kind of like um, what has decent volume, trying to predict, trying to predict kind of what is going to be popular down the road that maybe doesn't have search volume now.
Mhm.
Um, and then really, again, just calibrating, right? I mean, also there was a lot of work, there was a lot of work done that I don't necessarily do, or we don't do anymore on the manual promotion side, like getting our stuff on Reddit, or um, actively thinking about like what would referral traffic from Hacker News do. So that's kind of the first year, and then after that, once we figured out like, okay, these are the topics um, that the audience cares the most about, um, it really began to like I forget if you and I talked about this off air, but um, you always hear that there's like a linear relationship between how frequently you post and traffic. I never really saw that in real life, but we very much have seen that at LogRocket. Um, Now it hasn't been a straight 45-degree angle,
Yeah.
it's been lots of kind of backwards and forwards. But if you look at it over time, but way back in September of 2017, there was 40,000 page views a month, and then here we are at a little over 3 million.
That is just such an insane trajectory.
Um, I wish, I mean, there are things that we have done in, course corrections and um, broadened out to different topics. And to me, um, quality is really important. And I think everyone just says that, and they should, but you can't just, we don't just kind of crank out educational or front end tutorial stuff. Like the authors that we recruit, they go through a vetting process and they know their stuff. And yeah, I mean, I'm actually, I keep waiting for things to plateau, right? Like, okay, there's got to stop at some point. I thought that when we hit 1 million, I thought that when we hit 2. Yeah. So there are a couple of other similar publications. And when we all moved off of Medium, um, I just talked about this on the LogRocket podcast, which is called PodRocket. That's my shameless plug. You can check it out at podrocket.logrocket.com. But I just talked about it with Swix, one of the latest episodes, where like we're talking about how Medium is maybe not a great platform for companies, and then at the time, Free Code Camp, Hacker Noon, which are giants kind of in the dev space from a publication standpoint, and then LogRocket, which we at the time we were not giants, and I would argue maybe we're not now, but who knows. We all decided independently to migrate off of Medium, and we didn't talk to each other. I kind of wish we would have. We would have saved ourselves a lot of extra work. Medium is not designed for exporting your stuff, but we did it. So.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's crazy. I followed the Hacker Noon journey pretty closely because I put into their crowdfunding campaign they did a couple years ago. So I get their updates. It's been crazy. I don't know if there are case studies of the LogRocket blog out there. If there's not, maybe we should do one because there's rich history here. There's lots to be learned from what has happened over the last 3.5 years. And part of that has been building a team, right? Like you now have 6 or 7 full-time people working under you.
Yeah. We're at 6. And I'm going to hire, the plan is to hire at least, 4 to 6 more this year.
Oh, wow.
And so at that point we have, that's a full editorial team.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, this is maybe a good time to kind of segue into the roles on the team and where I see this particular role.
Yeah, definitely.
So, I'm the director, there's me. I feel like so far I have done kind of every role on the LogRocket content team, since starting, right? Like when it was just me and 6 of us in a conference room, I was the one dealing with the writers and editing and all that stuff. And then kind of as we've grown, I'm much more strategy focused and thinking about really, we have a managing editor. The managing editor is the one now thinking about how do we keep the blog going, managing the calendar, managing the other writers, making sure that the authors get paid on time, etc. Kind of all of the details work, which I don't want to undersell. It's incredibly difficult and super important.
Yeah.
So we have a manager, we have a couple of senior content managers. Those folks have been with us for a while and have demonstrated that they can do the core job, and they can also take we call it experimental content, but it's experimental in the sense like, would it work for us? You could probably, I mean, how many different types of content are there? I don't know, a dozen, 15, ebooks, white papers, university, etc.
Yeah.
So we look at that and go, well, if we were to do that and open up that new channel, how would we do it? LogRocket is very big on, I guess you'd call it the scientific method, right? Like start small. What's your hypothesis? Do a little experiment, see if it works. Anyway, so that's what those senior content managers are working on, is kind of that experimental content. The content manager that I'm hiring for now is, it starts as a primarily editorial job. right? It begins where, like, the first 30 days, I don't really ask anyone to do anything but read, because I'm not looking for people who, I mean, it'd be nice, but I'm not looking for people who have front end experience. That's just not a reasonable thing to look for. So yeah, spend the first 30 days reading, catching up, getting your feet wet, and then, just show that you're comfortable with the way that we use WordPress. You publish regularly. You can kind of interact with authors and manage them and make sure that they're hitting deadlines um, and evaluating pitches in the way that makes the most sense. And then after you've kind of shown that you can do that, then you get your own kind of other type of project, whether it's experimental content or, you take over recruiting and that's yours and you own that. Because I do realize that strictly editing and managing writers kind of forever is not that exciting, right? Like, people do, it doesn't really do much for your career either, which for me matters a lot. Like, I do want people on my team to have an opportunity to grow. So
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, and at the scale you're talking about, like 6 or 7 people now, 10 or 12 by the end of this year, like that's a content team big enough to support a couple of other kind of content-ish roles, like someone who's helping you continue to build a content team, for example. So I think it's pretty cool that you're thinking far ahead on that. I think people will appreciate that. Um, can you kind of imagine like what this person's day-to-day job will look like?
I can. And the nice thing is that it's been like, because we've onboarded so many folks, that it's the path is pretty well worn, and that's nice. I mean, I'll start with the day-to-day is, like I said, lots of editing. We have something like, I think at this point it's something like 450 freelancers kind of in
Wow.
our pool.
Yeah. Wow. That's incredible.
It started, all of those names begin, from 3 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And some freelancers and some writers will write for us a couple times a month, and others a couple times a year. I mean, it really depends on what they're doing. In order to write for us, you have to be a practicing front end engineer, right? So we understand that people are doing other things. So anyway, so you're editing stuff that comes in. You are constantly receiving pitches from people that, like, you may have heard from last week, or you may have heard from 6 months ago. I actually just got an email from somebody that I had sent a recruiting message to at the end of 2019, and he was like, "Hey, I know this is a year late, but I'm interested in writing now." That happens. That's not that weird. Like, it does happen. You're like, okay, no problem. So yeah, so you're doing lots of editing. You're kind of, I would like for everyone on the team to be experts in the way that we use WordPress. And I keep saying the way that we use WordPress, in order to kind of make the code, because we're showing lots of code snippets in WordPress. Like, you got to format and use a little bit of HTML and CSS. So, like, I would like for everyone to get there. However, I am experimenting with kind of outsourcing that formatting so that it frees up the team to work on things that are a little more high impact, right? Like, you can work on content stuff instead of spending maybe like half your day fiddling with CSS. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Um,
Yeah.
cool. No, that's great. Are there certain things you're looking for in applications? Like, are you looking for, I mean, you mentioned not looking for front end developer experience, but is there some technical capability that folks should have? Are there things you're looking for in writing samples? Is there a way that you're going to evaluate folks' editing abilities?
Yeah. It's so, it's always a bonus when I see, like, really anybody who's had some experience with front end or web development. The very first person that I hired at LogRocket, she had attended like a boot camp, and that gave her like a huge head start and over everyone else. Like,
Yeah.
she didn't have much editing experience, but just kind of, I knew that she could get started quickly. These days, I don't really look for that so much. What what I am looking for mostly, and this is probably comforting to liberal arts majors, is I find that English majors, poets, I find that journalism majors, um, I'm trying to think of anything else, like classics, literature. These are the types of people anyway, that seem to really enjoy taking, you know, a lot of our writers, English is not their first language, and so you are able to kind of discern the subtleties of like what are we was trying to be said here, and how can I make that better, and then um, develop relationships with folks from all over the world. Those are the people um, that enjoy the work. And then also, I'm looking for, so, I look for writing samples. Of course, I look for, just to kind of see it. I do give, I do give a little bit of homework for like, here are some real drafts that we get. Just show me how you would edit them. I do pay people for their time. I don't believe in uncompensated work. So yeah, I mean, those are kind of in broad strokes, that's what I'm looking for. I also think that like there's always, I'm sure other people have said this too, but in an ideal world, you're looking for something that like, what can a candidate bring to the team that maybe we don't already have? So like, you know, maybe here's somebody who's genuinely loves marketing, but happened to major in English and just like is very strong verbally. Or I don't know, is a videographer in their free time, like these are things that are kind of nice to have.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think what I want to be clear about is what I'm looking less for, just maybe not the right way to say it, but um, is somebody who thinks of themselves as a creative, uh, which is a creative, or somebody who is a storyteller in the sense that they'd like to create their own stories. They want to be doing the writing. That's not what this job is to start. Like it could very well be later on when you're interviewing people and all of that. But I'm always really transparent. Like it's an editorial job to start, and what I care about the most, at least for the first 6 months to a year, is show me your editing chops. Show me kind of how you can fit in with the rest of the team, and then we can talk about new things.
Yeah, that's cool. I love that. One thing, like as I chat with candidates who are looking for roles, for different folks, different situations make more sense. So like an example being like for some folks, going into a startup on the very ground floor and launching a blog from scratch is like exactly the right project for that person at that stage of their career. For other folks, plugging themselves into a big time, scaled up professional content workflow is exactly what they need. And there's going to be so much that someone can learn by being part of that experience. Cause I'm imagining it's pretty fast paced with that many writers, a team this big, a blog getting that much traffic. Like there's a lot going on. It's like, if you want to steep yourself in content marketing at scale, like this is going to be a really cool opportunity to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I hate to be like, yeah, you're right, it is awesome.
Yeah.
But it is, I think that it's different. Look, I mean, I feel like anybody in content has had jobs where you're either the only content person or maybe one of two, and you're not always doing the kind of content that you feel is makes the most impact, right? Like the same example that I always use is like, at some point you become the word person and you're proofreading sales emails. I'm happy to proofread a sales email if like the deal is $100,000, but maybe not so much as like part of the job.
Yeah. Yeah.
At LogRocket, the content operation is pretty well oiled. There's always room for more process and more, and we'll need to do that, right? Like as we scale up. But no, it's a great opportunity to learn. Here's how you fit in with a broader, we'll call it a publication, like a broader publication where we need we need things to arrive when they're supposed to, and of course that doesn't happen all the time. And then you need to be able to have relationship with your team members and say, hey, this person blew their deadline. We're like a couple blog posts of short today. Do you have anything that's ready? What can we publish now? It's very much, I've never worked in a newsroom, but this is kind of what I imagine it's like.
Yeah.
So
That's awesome. One of the things I did want to ask you about was location. So obviously remote or remote-ish for now, but I mean, you all are hoping to be back in your Boston office at some point. Is that right?
Yeah. So we've been remote since March of last year. There's no timetable on when we're going back, but the goal is that LogRocket will be back in the office. Our office is located in downtown Crossing in downtown Boston, and yeah, I think the candidates that I'm looking for, you don't need to be in the office every day. I think couple 2-3 times a week, totally reasonable. So I'm looking for people that are within striking distance.
Okay.
That's kind of it. Yeah, we don't. I'm trying to think. I don't believe we have anyone that's remote full time.
Right. Honestly, that sounds great. Sign me up for an office. I'm so ready to interact with people.
I used to think that I could do remote full time forever, and then I'm like, I nope. I would like 2 to 3 times a week in the office would be perfect.
Yeah. The hybrid. I think that's the sweet spot.
Yeah.
Well, cool. So folks who are interested should check out the blog. They should check out the podcast. They obviously hope already have watched this video. If you have an Ahrefs account, plug it in, like study it, like try to reverse engineer it. Like this is the type of thing that I encourage folks to do, is like really try to study the site if they're considering applying to work at a company, just to kind of get an idea of like the kind of the underlying mechanisms that make it all work. And if you have questions, reach out. You can reach out to me. If I have answers, I'll give them to you. If not, I'll get them from Brian and get you those answers. And best of luck. If folks also, if you want someone to review a cover letter, look at writing samples or whatever, I will volunteer myself to help you with that. If you want to just get some quick feedback, hit me up. I would love to help. Brian, thank you. I appreciate your time, and really excited about this role and excited to get it posted for you.
Yeah, me too. I appreciate your help. And people, you can apply through the proper application channels, but you should also feel free just to email me too. It's just Brian@LogRocket. One of the advantages of being kind of an early employee is you get a nice email that's real easy to remember.
Yeah. I love that. People should definitely take you up on that too.
Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. Well, thanks a lot, Brian.
Cool, man.
Take care.
Talk to you later.